How y'all feeling? Good. How many people marched? Yeah? Was it too hot or was it okay?
Too hot.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to elaborate a little bit more. Again, Carlos Garcia from Puente. Elaborate a little bit more on the overall immigration struggle and what's going on. So this past November 2014, the immigrant rights movement won its greatest victory we had achieved in 25 years. It happened because we organized. We did it by disobeying the common logic of the Beltway, by ignoring the talking points that would win the hearts of our opponents, but erase the culture cursing in our veins. The irony is that the majority of those who fought the hardest for executive action were left out. Because our community is not just aspiring Americans. We are poor people, brown people, black people, people of color. And in the United States, that means we are targeted for criminalization. More than half of the federal prosecutions in this country are for immigrant offenses. The fight for migrant rights is not an effort to assimilate into the U.S. It is a fight against a war of attrition that has been declared on us. When inflammatory racist statements are slung around, the backlash comes in the only way this country knows how, in declaring war. In response to the civil rights movement, it declared war on a black community disguised as the war on drugs. After 9/11, Muslim and Arab communities became the target of the war on terror. And since the mega marches of 2006 for immigrant rights, where we awoke the giant, we've seen a war of attrition aimed at migrant, Latino, indigenous communities to make our lives so miserable that we self-deport. The aftermath of such wars, like the war on drugs and the war on terror, is black and brown, poor people ending up dead, in prison, or deported. What we have seen in Arizona in the last 10 years is expanding racist policies that started by first calling us illegal, making statements like Trump did. Trump may call us rapists or criminals, but leading Democrats respond by throwing our constituencies under the bus for one another, saying that immigrants commit less criminal acts than people born in the United States. Who are they talking about? What does that mean? And how do we respond is the question. People who have directly experienced Arpaio's raids and racial profiling have taken away much of his powers, and now he's on trial. When we say not one more deportation, we mean it. We won't divide into deserving and undeserving. We will be united in a fight at the intersection between the criminal justice and the immigrant rights movement. Arizona made our language illegal in our schools, but we will still speak up. Arizona made learning our history outlawed, but we will carry on its legacy. Arizona makes our skin color a crime, but we will resist. We will worry less of our talking points if our talking points appeal to xenophobes who hate us, and more if our demands place us on the line with the Black Lives Matter movement and the people who share the fate that we share our fate with. We will worry less if we speak right, if our pants are pulled up, or if our records are clean. Whether we wear a cap and gown or handcuffs and stripes, we have the same right to remain. We have the same right to dignity and respect. And on colonized land, like where you're sitting today, anyone who tells us otherwise will have to get out of the way, because we're not stopping until we're free. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Felipe Sousa-Garcia.
Love you. Well, let me just begin by first giving a big shout out to ADAC and also QuipAZ, our wonderful groups here in Arizona who fight day and night for the liberation of immigrants here. Well, I'm Felipe Sousa-Rodriquez. I serve as the Deputy Managing Director of United We Dream. United We Dream is the largest undocumented youth-led organization in the country. We have 53 affiliates in 26 states, including here in Arizona. Some of my peers are here. They're right there, Jaciel, Mario, and look, all of them, they're all there. I came to the United States when I was 14 years old from Brazil. My mother was very sick, and like many other parents, she had a very difficult decision to make. Should she keep her son, or should she do everything she can so I could one day have a better life, but also survive and thrive and be able to stand here in front of you? It was her sacrifices that made me be here with you today. But one thing that she taught me when I was very little, I was walking down the street, we were very poor, and she saw a young kid crying. We only had enough money that day to buy 5 pieces of bread, and she made me give it away. I did. And then I asked her why. I came up to her and said, "Why did you make me give away the only food we had?" She said, "Felipe, if you wanna change the world, you have to work until your hands bleed. And when they bleed, you go right back to work because there's so much to be done." That's the wonderful mother I had. But when I arrived in the US, I didn't have papers, but I also kissed a boy and I really liked it. And then I had to start realizing what it meant to be a queer person, an immigrant, living in the South. But I found in the immigrant rights movement, a life-saving solution. I found in the immigrant rights movement a place where I could be my full self, but also a place where I could stand strong and fight for my rights. We worked day and night and won deferred action for childhood arrivals for 1.2 million undocumented youth in this country. And then we went back for our parents. So we went back, actually, in this very conference, I interrupted the vice president. And I remember because I stood up and then I looked at the vice president and I said, "Mr. Vice President," from the crowd, "why do you want to deport my mother? Why do you want to deport my father?" And he looked at us and then, responded to that. But this is the type of courage that it took to really push the agenda, to really push the boundaries. Carlos spoke so eloquently just now about undocumented youth, undocumented workers standing up for themselves and speaking and pushing decision makers. And who would have known that against all odds, we won? But this is not only my victory. This is your victory. This is the victory not only for the immigrant rights movement, this is a victory for the progressive movement. Perhaps one of the biggest victories we've ever had since 1986. And this is important for us to remember. So if you ever participated in any action, any rally for immigrant rights, stand up. Stand up. If you signed a petition, have you signed a petition for immigrant rights? Stand up. Made a phone call, asked somebody to vote a certain way? Stand up. Look around the room. It takes a village to change the world. It takes a village to change the country, and you are part of that change. But now, Republicans are trying to take that away from us. And this is important for us to remember because we fought really hard, and God knows we fought real hard, and now we're gonna fight really hard to keep it. Because we're not gonna let for our parents, we're not gonna let our peers, our neighbors get deported. But beyond that, the president can still do a lot more to protect our communities against deportation. One of the things that he can do is to stop detaining LGBTQ immigrants. Some of the things that I'm about to say, I hope that you really listen to right now. Trans women in detention are 13 times more likely to be raped or sexually harassed. I'm gonna say that again. 13 times more likely to be sexually harassed or raped in a detention center. Are we willing to live in a country where people are tortured in detention centers in a desert? Is this the type of country that we want to live in? I hope you're sitting there thinking, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. This is why we decided to start a campaign called Break the Cage with many amazing people and organizations. Because as young, undocumented youth, we're not going to stand around and wait for our trans brothers and sisters to be tortured, to be put in solitary confinement, to be taken away from our communities, and sometimes be sent back to countries where they will definitely be killed and persecuted. Some say that ICE already reformed this detention system, but the truth is that a cage is a cage, and no human being deserves to be in a cage, and no detention is good, and we need to stand up for what's right. Stand up for what's impossible, but what's right. We need to live in a country where incarcerating human beings is not the norm. So I'm here to tell you that from Houston to Homestead, from Jackson Heights to Jackson, Mississippi, our leaders will fight, our leaders will organize, our leaders will build. But my question to you is, will you join us? Well, let me hear you. Will you join us? Se puede? Se puede? Thank you.